Order. Let the record reflect that we have all directors present. At this time, I would like to ask Director McLeod to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a special guest with us today, Gunnison County Commissioner, Mr. Phil Chamberlain. Would you like to speak? I believe so.
Okay. Well, thanks. John McLeod asked me if I'd be willing to welcome the CWCB here to this meeting in Mount Crescent View. He told me that listening to politicians was one of your least favorite things to do and to be brief. Being the pillar that he is, who am I not to heed his warning? So, in that vein, welcome to Mount Crescent View and the Gunnison Valley. Thank you. You don't get away that easy. I do have a few things that I do want to say, and this is very heartfelt from Gunnison County and from our commissioners. The work that you so diligently put your efforts and resources towards is of great importance to Gunnison Country and to the state of Colorado. CWCB's mission statement is plainly stated. In the arid southwest of the United States, water is our lifeblood. Green fields and hay meadows of the Gunnison Country, along with the ranching they support, the farms in the Old Fork Valley and across the western slope, Blue Mesa Reservoir and its 1 million visitors a year, are all just examples of the diligent pursuit of your mission statement. In a world that has become so hectic on a day-to-day basis and a myriad of demands that we all have competing for one another, for our precious resources, and one of them which I call time. I, for one, want to thank every one of you for being here and making this a priority. For the demands on our water resources today, your work on the CWCB is critical. I know that it isn't always easy to accomplish, but keep doing the hard work, and Colorado will be a better place for your efforts. Again, I want to welcome you to Mount Crescent, the Gunnison Country, and a heartfelt thanks for the time and energy that you put into this issue. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. We are truly very appreciative of the invitation to be here, and it is really beautiful country, and thank you again. We do appreciate it. Actually, the agenda item number 1, board appointments. Our 3 new directors have already taken their oath of office, but I would certainly like to recognize them now. Director Heather Dutton from the Rio Grande, Director Celine Hawkins from the Southwest, and Director Jack Goebel from Arkansas. Welcome and thank you for your service. Let's have a round of applause for our directors. And also another new director. We are very happy with our new executive director, Ms. Becky Mitchell. Actually, let's go to item number 2. And I'm sorry, our new state engineer too, Mr. Kevin Ryan. Very good, very good. Now let's go to item number 2, review and approval of the agenda. Director Gallagher. It's moved by Director Gallagher, second by Director Yon. Further discussion? All those in favor, signify by an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 3, review and approve May 17th, 18th, 2017 board meeting minutes. Director George.
Chairman, there's a blank on page 11, item 28A. We need to fill in the name of the gentleman Fort Collins who was here. His name is Jerry Porak. So that the final minutes can reflect his identity in that space.
Any other corrections or additions? We have a motion by Director George. Is there a second? Second by Director Gallagher to have the minutes corrected. All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move down to item number 4, approve and or remove consent agenda items. Motion by Director Wells. Second by Director Yon to approve the consent agenda. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now, down to item number 5, proposed board meeting dates in 2018. This is an informational item only. Seeing no disagreements here, we will move to item number 6, future board meeting dates, 2017. At this point in time, I'd very much like to welcome you all to Walton, Colorado. We look forward to seeing you. And then we have a meeting November 15th and 16th, and that will be in Denver. Any discussion with that? Seeing none, let's move to item number 7, director's reports. Let's start out with Executive DNR Director, Director Randall.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, everyone. Great to be here in Crescent View. Thank you for the welcome. I appreciate that. Again, Bob Randall for the Department of Natural Resources. I'm going to keep this brief. I want to reiterate the chair's welcome to our new board members and thank you in advance for your service. I'm really proud of these appointments. And excited to get to Bob Randall for the Department of Natural Resources. I'm going to keep this brief. I want to reiterate the chair's welcome to our new board members and thank you in advance for your service. Lots of change in the water community right now, and I am confident that it's all for the better, and again, just excited to get to work with everyone in these new capacities. The one thing I want to touch on, and I'm happy to take questions, is the governor's executive order issued last Tuesday and announced out at Red Rocks on the state's plan for climate action. This is something in which DNR and CWCB were very involved. And again, it is a move that articulates some goals for the state and a way to meet them. It doesn't impose mandates, but I want to go over climate action those elements. And again, this is something that Mitchell sent out a message to the board last week, I think, late in the week, that included some of this information too. But again, the order articulates goals that will be incorporated into the Colorado Climate Plan, that the state will reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions by more than 26% from 2005 levels by 2025. A note on that is the same number and the same goal articulated in the Paris Accord, to which the United States had signed on until recently. The governor also articulated the goal to reduce CO2 emissions from the electricity sector by 25% by 2025 and by 35% by 2030 from 2012 levels. And finally, a goal of achieving electricity savings of 2% of total electricity sales by 2020. These are elements that are going to be incorporated into the state's climate plan. That is a responsibility of DNR to do under the executive order, to amend the plan to incorporate these and to work with stakeholders on how they can best be achieved and any other innovative ideas that would be in furtherance of these goals. So again, that's going to be work that that we will embark upon in the coming weeks. I think we have until October 1st in the final order to get that done. The order included some other policy goals that to maximize the use of renewable energy. This is an idea that has strong support, over 80% support among Colorado voters. And the governor strongly believes, and the evidence shows that that can be done without an increase in electricity rates and electricity bills. So, and then finally, the state is to have an electric vehicle plan by January of 2018. And we have the ability to use some of the Volkswagen settlement money to do some of that work too. So again, it was an exciting announcement. I think it showed real leadership by the governor.
07 red
courage to embark on something that is, in my personal view, good policy and necessary to do. It's one of those things that is,
LMS
you can take
guest.
some shots for it, but I think it's the right thing to do for the state, and I strongly believe that he thinks that as well. So happy to take any questions on that or any other matter going on with the department. I trust that Director Broscheid might touch on greater safe grouse. That's an issue that we've been really involved in as well, but I'll let him keep that on.
Director, or questions for Director Randall?
Thank you.
Moving on to IBCC Director, Dr. John Stahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. Couple of things. Appreciated the tour yesterday. Director Gonzalez, thanks for arranging that, and saw some country I had never seen before. And Joe Lusto still has not answered my question on how many times he had to go up to that beautiful site before he decided to locate a snowmaker. But no, a great tour, beautiful scenery, and so it's one of the perks of being part of this organization. The IBCC is trying to schedule a meeting for September, kind of get past the August water congress and that sort of thing. We haven't set a date yet. We're going to be again getting reports back from the individual basins, basin implementation plans, and those several roundtables I've been able to get to. I've been impressed by how hard they're working on addressing their implementation plan and having it consistent with the water plan and the restoration of those funds out of the projects bill. Very much appreciated, and so I see a lot of the roundtables re-looking at their criteria and guidelines for their basin, and I think we're going to see some very creative requests for additional funds based on what the water plan and the new projects bill has available. We're also going to probably take up some summary of the ATMs, a number of good things going on there. Also, based on our last several IBCC's discussion on long-term funding, will continue. I think I reported last time people are fine with they're not so concerned about the source, but they would like to be involved in how it gets invested or spent. And so that's kind of comes hand in hand if we do end up using some sort of mechanism like a ballot initiative, like having a very well articulated plan is going to be important if that's going to be successful. Also the interim water resource review committee of the legislature is meeting they're in Denver on the 2nd, 3rd of August, as well as the steamboat at the water congress on the 23rd of August. A number of us will be making presentations and updates to various legislation and potential new legislation to them. One other follow-up I'd like to make to Director Randall's comments about the governor's climate action plan. Sometimes these get kind of complex and that sort of thing, but one of the questions the governor was asked and his answer at the end of the press conference was that he kind of made the comment that, there's two things here you have to consider. What part of clean water and clean air do you have an issue with, or stable energy prices or even lower energy prices. Those are kind of two of the main aspects of this climate action plan, being it's voluntary for the most part, but the state stands ready to help on those issues and trying to move forward. And so I think it's been very well received. And at that point, I would stop and see if there's any questions of me.
Questions of Dr. Stahl? I don't think so. Thank you. Let's move on to Deputy Agricultural Commissioner, Mr. Chris Boswell.
Good morning. Just a few issues to talk about. There's been a lot of focus on trade with Cuba in our markets department. We decided to look in a different direction and actually just came back from a meeting with the Dominican Republic where it looks like we've opened up some doors for both export of beans, potatoes, and some potato seeds. We think that that's really important. The more markets we can open up, the better off we'll be. The door might be closing on Cuba anyway, and so the trade opportunities there are pretty weak. In October, we're going to host in Colorado the Tri-National Accords. The Tri-National Accords are the countries of Mexico, Canada, and the United States. It's a 25-year meeting that's been going on. This will be the 26th, the follow-up to NAFTA. A lot of important issues for us to discuss this year. There's still some issues that have been hanging for 25 years, but there's also been a lot of cooperation and change and a lot of opportunity presented by these annual meetings. And that will be held actually in Denver, and we are the host of that. We're working right now on a stakeholder meetings on the possibility of using hemp in animal feed. You can actually go online right now and buy, particularly for pets, food that has hemp in it, touting the fiber. There really is no science or background on this. This is something that was asked of us by Senator Donovan and passed by the legislature. We're going to be doing that study and working with those groups in the next, I think the meeting will be held sometime in September. Something that we really need to take a look at is we're also trying to expand market possibilities for hemp as well. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is the Colorado State Fair is coming up. It runs August 26th through September 4th. It's the longest annual event in the state of Colorado, and actually started before the state. And this would invite everyone to go to the website, take a look. A lot of fun things to do with the fair, and a lot of changes with the new manager there. I was joking with her the other day. The last year I managed the fair, the Colorado State Fair was ranked 21st in the nation. Last year it was ranked 9th, so all they had to do was get rid of me and you bumped up 12 points immediately. So I would invite you all to attend the fair this year.
Any questions for Deputy Commissioner Weissman? Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Moving on to the CWC Executive Director, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you. It's a little different from this angle, so slightly more nervous. Didn't think that was possible. Yeah, it has been an exciting first 11 days on the job. So I think my director's report will reflect that. I wanted to also echo the welcome to the new board members. We're really excited to be working with all the board, but we're really thankful for the new board members also. One of the big news is on July 11th, CWCB finalized with the Colorado Water Trust. I think Director Gallagher will talk a little bit about this more tomorrow. This is for releases from Stagecoach Reservoir for in-stream flow on the Yampa River. The Water Trust entered into this agreement with the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District on June 30th, and these releases of 10 CFS began on July 11th. And thank you, Kevin Ryan, for allowing us to work with her. But began administering the rights on July 13th. So it's important to recognize that these in-stream flow releases will support recreational uses and the river environment within the city of Steamboat. On to other news. The U.S.-Mexico and Minute 323 negotiations. Representatives from the United States, Mexico, and Colorado River Basin states remain engaged in these negotiations. You'll be hearing about these later today. And it's important to remember this would extend the Minute 319. The language in this Minute 323 is considered near final. I really want to thank the CWCB staff and the Colorado Office of the Attorney General, who did an exorbitant amount of work to get us to this point. I also wanted to mention some other things that are happening across the state. Is that okay? Time? In regards to water plan implementation, there's some exciting events that are happening. You'll hear about these through the water plan implementation presentation, but I wanted to expand a little bit on some of them. The first one being the Water and Growth Dialogue, and that's through a water efficiency grant with the Keystone Center facilitating a dialogue to quantify water use through different land use patterns, as well as bringing together land use and water managers to discuss where there can be some integration between water and land use. This is a big step in the state and a good way to look at things. So staff from the CWCB has been intricately involved in that and served on the technical advisory group, as well as the steering committee. We're represented by Kevin Reedy there, and he's doing some amazing work. That kind of tees up into the next topic, which is the Senate Bill 15008 implementation. We're also working with DOLA to create trainings specified in that bill, aka the land use bill. And that bill stated that CWCB and DOLA would create trainings for land use and water planning professionals. Many of those trainings have occurred. The webinars and modules are posted on the water plan link. So those are important for everyone to look at. Additionally, you see Chris Sturm out in the audience, and he's been working very diligently on implementing Colorado's water plan, but it's important to also recognize that CWCB is currently engaged in 6 stream management plans in the South Platte, Gunnison, where we're at, Yampa, Colorado, and Southwest Basins. Plans identify environmental and recreational values that are of importance, and they're really focusing on assessing existing information, flow impacted reaches, as well as well-functioning reaches. And management actions with those stream management plans include setting flow targets and describing habitat flow relationships. And some of those plans are even assessing flow needs for agriculture and municipal uses as well. You saw Joe Busto yesterday. He doesn't work just on cloud seeding. He also works on creating river surf environments. So his job seems pretty fun, actually. He gets to travel up to Crested Butte, and then he gets to work on the South Platte working group. And with that, the CWCB has created a partnership with communities and the Corps of Engineers, and they're revitalizing an area of the South Platte just downstream of Chatfield Dam. Some of those recent successes have included building the first freestanding river wave. I guess you can go out and surf it. Maybe that's what we should go look at some point when we're in the Metro Basin. But there's been a lot of work done on that, but this collaborative work really embodies the principles within the state's water plan. So finding win-win projects for water supply, flooding, river restoration, recreation, and the environment, and working with all the folks building those projects. So I have to give Joe some kudos for having a good job. So he did he's really made sure he finds his niche and does things that he likes. So I also wanted to spend a minute to announce a retirement that happened between the last board meeting and today's board meeting. So we wanted to congratulate Steve Miller. He did retire June 30th. was the date of his retirement, and that was named by Governor Hickenlooper Steve Miller Day. So congratulations, Steve. I promise you, I've seen him in the office pretty much every day since then. So he's probably listening, and so I'm sure he'll hear our congratulations. With that brought somebody that may be familiar to you. With Steve's departure, you may see Brent Newman back there. He actually did take about a year off from us. You might not have known that, but he's back now. He did a little stint in the South and in New Orleans and decided that he didn't like bugs and humidity and came back up here. So we get to fill that, the gap of Steve Miller's departure with Brent Newman. We're excited for that. That is most of what I have to say. I'm sure I'll chime in if needed.
Well, great. Any other questions for Director Miller? All right, before we do move on, I would like to take a moment. Hopefully Mr. Miller is listening in, and I would like the board to join me if he is, and give him a round of applause for his extraordinary work that he's done for the CWCB over the years. All right, let's move to number E, our new state engineer, Mr. Kevin Ryan. It wasn't an oversight on my part. I just kind of planned on making a big deal of it now, but we are extremely happy to have you here and look forward to a long relationship.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Director Wattenberg, and not being quite possessed with all of Director Mitchell's good form, I'm going to just use the floor for a few minutes to talk about myself and my new role, if I can do that, because I'd like to recognize a few things, and I do appreciate the ability to be a part of this board. I've sat in, you've seen me before, and it's a little different now when I'm actually part of it, so I really appreciate that. You can also imagine that it's just a little bit more than daunting to be following some of my shapeable shoes, you all know Dick. And so you can imagine that speaks for itself. But getting encouraging comments from all of you is a big piece of what gives me the confidence and actually enthusiasm to move forward with that. I would say that the enthusiasm comes with a healthy dose of humility and respect for the position that I'm in. The humility comes really from looking at other candidates at DWR and what a great pool Bob Randall had to look at, and just the fact that my predecessors, Dick Wolf, Hal Simpson, have set such a great course for the Division of Water Resources that I'd like to continue that legacy, and that is a part of the respect I have for the position, and the staff of the Division of Water Resources has also set that course. I've been fortunate over the last 19 years to be trained by, and I would say mentored by, the current staff at the Division of Water Resources, all the way from permitting technicians and water commissioners and division engineers. So I'm really looking forward to continuing that relationship with our staff. You all know that the reputation for our staff speaks for itself. My background is kind of growing up the way I just described, being a team leader and the deputy state engineer, and being able to get my hands a little bit of everything, and I hope that I'm able to use that going forward. I want to say specifically for this board that I appreciate that through this process, the appointment, there was some attention given by the department to the Colorado Water Plan Control Panel, and that was really helpful and validating for me, because I believe that some of the things we've been doing at the state engineer's office has been working with people that
I didn't think I did that. You got that for you guys either.
To the water plan and help me through the administrative hurdles and ideas on how to move forward. So it's not a privilege that I take lightly to be in that role as well. And let me just finally say again, Director Mitchell, I really appreciate her and her appointment. It's great to come in. I know there's some of that I already have a great rapport with, and I don't think I know that we've talked about how we can continue with even a greater close rapport and working together. That's really important to me, so I appreciate that.
Or we can just
On to a few update items, and I'll be coming up to speed on a few things that Dick was involved in that I was not as actively involved in, but there's some ongoing things that I think you all are a
Well, let's
little
put them
bit familiar with.
on top of
Republic River Compact Administration, we continue to work with the other two states on that, trying to work through issues that are out there so that we're not litigating them. And that's an ongoing process that continues with our meeting here in just a few weeks. Also on the Rio Grande groundwater rules, we're continuing to meet with parties on the rules, working towards stipulations and settlements so that we can minimize and hopefully eliminate any issues with filing rules. I want to point out, I think you've had updates from Greg Johnson on the criterion guidelines for the agricultural water protection water rights. And our complimentary piece of that at the state engineer's office has been rules for substitute water supply plan approvals for that same effort. We'll probably be filing rules with the court, maybe in July or maybe in August. But we had a real good run of planning and stakeholder meetings, and I believe we have a good rules document that should do fairly well in court. Of course, we always have to file and see, but that'll be, excuse me, that'll be coming up very soon. I want to point out that there has been an effort in the Republican River Basin to develop compact rules. That process was going well and is going well, but was paused. We do have, and I believe Dick probably mentioned this before, but we do have a conflict or a disconnect with how any litigation or enforcement related to those rules will follow, and there's probably a need for a statutory fix for that. So those are on pause right now while we work through that, and hopefully this session. Last thing I want to mention, related specifically to, we have a group in Division of Water Resources, Hydrogeological Services Group, and there are our groundwater experts, pardon me, and they do a lot of our groundwater monitoring, groundwater measurement. We were privileged to get a grant from the USGS as part of their effort on the National Groundwater Monitoring Network, where that grant gives us some extra money. We'll do some stepped up monitoring in some of the high plains aquifers and actually be part of the groundwater monitoring network. So I think that it looks good for
reciprocate for you, Ms. Mitchell, that when I first came to Colorado, you were one of the first people that welcomed me here, not knowing anybody. And so certainly I'll repay that favor. You got a good support group in the department, and for us directors to set the example for our folks, it's going to continue. You're both very well respected in Parks and Wildlife, so shouldn't be very hard. Just a couple updates. As Director Randall mentioned, sage grouse has been the, well, pretty much every day, every hour in the last month after the secretarial order came out about reviewing 11, 80 some, 90 some BLM RMPs and 70 million acres across 11 Western states. And so we've been engaged in that from CPW and the department, as in the executive director's office and the governor's office, about what this review is and how are we going to basically let the efforts continue on, although with some tweaks that we all agreed we need to do at the state level. We were sequestered for 2 straight days with about 90% of the room was feds, and there but minor representation from the states. And 6th is D-Day. That's when the recommendations are provided to Secretary Zinke, and he's going to make the decision on whether the RMPs will stay, RMPs will be amended, or the RMPs could be tossed out and we could be starting all over again. So at this point, we cooperated and made sure our comments were well known about those plans, and we'll see where it goes from here. The other part is that as the positions are being vacated in the high levels of the federal government, I'm seeing a lot of my friends as state directors getting yanked back to DC. So Director of Utah, Greg Sheehan, is now the acting director of Fish and Wildlife Service. And then once that director is confirmed, he'll be the leading deputy director in the Fish and Wildlife Service. So he's a good guy. He's trying to keep the ship going.
Hello.
But it's overwhelming. I couldn't even imagine. The other is we had a retirement too. Most of you know Ron Velarde. He retired about 2 weeks ago after 47 years in the Division of Wildlife and Parks and Wildlife. And I think that truly is a record of anybody, not just in the state, but across the country. Ron, as you all know, is an institution. And seeing him go out the door is bittersweet. He certainly needs to enjoy the fruits of those 47 years with his grandkids and his family, but at the same time, a lot of knowledge and history, contacts is walking out the door as well. I don't think Ron is going to go off the sunset out. I think we're going to continue to see Ron. He's going to help us out wherever he can. And right now we have the position open. We opened it internally. We've got about 6 or 7 candidates that have thrown their hat in. So we'll be filling that position. Very, very critical position. It's a critical part of the state, and we're looking for somebody with some really good leadership that's going to step in and not try to fill Ron's shoes, but we set the path for the future here that we can continue to maintain, but also where we can expand our efforts to. The other is, you've probably seen in the news, hit or miss, right or wrong, the loss of our lease at Lone Tree Reservoir. This was an effort. We've been leasing that lake on basically a biannual basis for about the last 20 years. We don't own the lake. We were just leasing the recreational rights, and those rights have been we've been outbid significantly by the homeowners association, who's either going to allow recreation or not, is going to build a golf course or not. Regardless, the fishing community is probably going to be impacted to some level as far as access to that lake goes. We couldn't even come close to matching that bid. In fact, we weren't even offered a chance to counter on that bid. So big loss for the Front Range, and for those folks that are up around that level and area that have been going there. It's talk about an institution. I think we're going to continue to see losing some of those recreational leases in the future, and we're going to try to prioritize those as best as we can to make sure that we can keep access open. You've also probably seen the recent coverage on black bears and some of the black bears that have been destroyed, or the black bears that have been tagged and released. Really, this is not an unusual year. This is pretty typical for this time of year. In fact, it's probably a little lower than most years. But somehow the bears are getting the attention of the media, and they're certainly expanding. And some are wanting to point the finger who's the cause. And I think many of you know there is no smoking gun. We're trying to do the best we can. We're trying to educate folks about garbage, educate folks about not feeding these bears. We had one call where somebody had been feeding a bear, I think up in your neck of the woods, Mr. Chairman. That bear was well in excess of 500 pounds. And was being hand-fed for years. And so we have all of those efforts that are going on, all these incidences, and we're going to continue to put public safety first. That's always at the top of our list. And if we can release those bears, we certainly will. The problem is there's really nowhere to release these bears anymore. I think most of the habitat is saturated. The density of population is at max, and these bears they're trying to survive. Unfortunately, when they get into urban environments and get into garbage and meat reliant, the saying that fed bears and dead bear is true, unfortunately. The other is that yesterday we had a level 1 notification at Alberta Park Reservoir. For those of you who don't know, that's located near Wolf Creek Ski Area in southwest Colorado. We had this on our list of dams to redo as a high priority next year when we were drilling some core samples and their sediment was flowing through, which is not a good sign. So we had to lower the level of that reservoir by 10 feet and add basically a sand filter to stop that flow of that sediment. Our area, along with the Department of Water Resources and others, are all over this. Very, very important that safety comes first, but there's also water rights associated with that. So we've got the former director, Travis Smith, is all over this, and we're trying to figure a way that we can account for the loss of that water and where we can store it. So I think we're bumping Alberta Park Reservoir Dam redo up a little bit in priority now as a result of this. But that's all the information I have. I was going to try to swing by on my way back to Denver and check in, but our dam engineer is on his way, and I think to help with DWR as well as Parks and Wildlife. Hopefully we can get a handle on this situation. So we did an assessment about 2 years ago about all our high-risk dams. There's 11 of them that are very, very high, and Alberta Park was at the top. So hopefully this is going to move it up into a little bit of a quicker redo. And those core samples were done to figure out, most of you know, but probably for the audience, is to figure out what that dam was built out of. And that's going to help us then do the engineering about how we're going to redo the dam in the future. So hopefully we can abate that emergency right now, but we'll definitely keep you posted, particularly the other divisions as we go. So.
Great. Questions for Director Brochot? Thank you. You'll find in your packet there's comments from Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority, Mr. Mike Rowe. Like I say, his information is in your packet for your use. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Let's go to Director Randall.
Could I, since we're ahead of schedule, could I indulge just one more moment?
Right.
Okay, thank you. So I spent most welcoming people and thanking them in advance for their service. If I can take a second just to recognize the people who got us to where we are now during the interim. So I know that we had robust send-offs for the 3 outgoing board members as their terms came to a close. But I just wanted to maybe acknowledge Directors Montgomery, Smith, and Hamill for helping us when we needed a quorum, helping us when there was a gap between the appointment of the new directors and the expiration of their terms. So I wanted to thank them for that. While I'm at it, I want to acknowledge Lauren Riss and her work as interim director for slightly longer than we thought it was going to be. And she was willing to do that, I think, and did double duty in addition to her role as assistant director at the Department for Water Issues. So Lauren, thank you so much for doing that. There was a short period, about a 10-day period, during which Scott Cuthbertson was the acting state engineer. He was on vacation at the time, so it wasn't a huge burden for him, I hope, but Scott, if you're listening, thanks for that. And then finally, we are finally fully staffed, or back to fully staffed at the Executive Director's Office with Madeline West returning from maternity leave. And we're really glad to have Madeline back. She's going to help Bob a lot. But Amy Laughlin in my office sort of stepped up and filled in during that period when we were short-staffed. So in addition to the welcomes, which again, I mean, sincerely, I just want to thank folks who helped us get to where we are today. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Randall. Would the board join me in a round of applause for these folks? They did an All right, let's move to agenda item number 8, flood recovery emergency watershed program update.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm Kevin Hout, the CWCB staff, and I'm here to present agenda item 8, the Emergency Watershed Protections Program, which is a partnership that CWCB staff have been undertaking for the past couple of years with the NRCS. And while I'm introducing this, Andrew's passing around our status update spreadsheet to all of you at the table. And yes, I can already hear the groans from the table. I'm right there with you. My old eyes have a hard time reading this as well. Really, the whole point of doing this is it's kind of for eye candy, just to give you an appreciation for how many moving parts we have in this program. There's a total of 70 projects listed here, some in the millions of dollars. And before I get started, I would just like to recognize Chris Sturm of my staff, who's sitting right here. If you could raise your hand for the benefit of the new board members. Chris is single-handedly managing all of these projects, in addition to all of the other projects that he manages through the watershed restoration program and the stream management grants and plans and everything else that he does. So he's a very busy person, and I just really want to commend Chris for all of his work. And if you take nothing else out of this presentation today, just realize how much is really going on in this program in such a short period of time. And I'm sure this is going to happen. Is there another one? Slide down, thanks. So let me kind of just go over what this program involved. I think many of you have at least heard of the program. If you've been reading your director's reports for the past couple of years, we have an item almost every meeting in regards to the program, but this might be the first time we've actually given a formal presentation. So let me kind of start at the beginning about what it is. This all relates back to the 2013 flood, which many of you remember along Colorado's Front Range and out on the northeastern plains, which was the disaster in Colorado's history. Depending on what method of measurement you use, it's been demonstrated having anywhere from about $3 to $3.5 billion of damage. And one of the significant sources of damage was not just to the people and their homes, but also to the streams themselves. We had a lot of sedimentation and erosion and up and down migration to a number of rivers. And so there was a lot of repair work that needed to be done in the wake of that flood. And the NRCS has a program known as the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. And they started out with a phase 1 in which they spent about $12 million or so, referred to as exigent repair work. And the best way I can describe that term is you might have a house that's about to fall in the river during the next runoff season if it doesn't get stabilized right away. And so they would go in and fix that. Typically, these were very quick projects. Often they just involve things like stream stabilization and riprap along channels. And sometimes it was even done with the recognition that it was temporary work and would get undone later. Not have a lot of involvement in that phase. We did have some indirect work such as design, but in large measures, this was the NRCS working directly with local sponsors. For phase 2, it was proposed by the NRCS and also the governor's office to bring CWCB staff into this program in order to have a more resilient outcome for the next phase. So at this point, we're looking at doing more than just protecting life and property, but also incorporating our other watershed and stream management principles into it. Resulted in the phase 2, which is what I'm talking about today. There were a total of 74 what we call damage survey reports prepared prepared. These are basically the blueprints for the projects that would ultimately develop. A few of those did drop off for various reasons. And I won't go into what those reasons are, but we ended up with about 70 projects that ended up getting implemented or about to get implemented. The total amount of funding for this from both federal, state, and other local and in some cases private sources is about $63 million with implementation. The state, through the Disaster Emergency Fund, has agreed to supply half of the 25% non-federal share, and that's been an enormous asset for the local governments who are already overstrapped during this flood recovery process, and being able to help them get these projects implemented. Just some milestones. I won't go into all these, but we signed a technical assistance agreement in the first half of 2015. And as you can work your way through this, we signed up a consultant for technical assistance. We did all of the designs. We started getting projects implemented. And the final date on the slide here is April of 2018. And there was a little bit of a difference in opinion on this, which we discovered about a year ago as to what exactly that date meant. We thought it meant that the projects were going, our technical assistance was ending, and they could go on past that. The NRCS clarified that no, not only does that mean that the projects are done, but the program is closed out by then. So we had a little bit of an emergency trying to get everything back up to speed, but we feel we've done that. And really what we're looking at is the construction, according to normal timelines, will be done in January and close out in April. I will talk a little bit about that later as to how that's going to play out. And I mentioned that there's opportunities for multiple benefits here. And again, this goes back to the NRCS program deals primarily with protecting life, safety, and property. And it was proposed early on that if all of this work is being done to protect these factors, why can't we bring other resilience measures into place and try to accomplish those at the same time? Because CWCB, through Chris and our other programs, does that through our watershed restoration programs. We achieve multiple benefits like what we see out there. And we decided early on, yes, we thought that we could, this was a good candidate to do these kind of activities. Can I get the next slide? So looking at the goals that the state developed for this emergency watershed protection program, goal 1 is consistent with what the NRCS does throughout all their EWP activities. And goal 2 as well, although they don't always have state funding in their activities. Goals 3 through 5 are the resilience initiatives that we feel we were able to bring to the table through our involvement. And we've already been able to demonstrate that through some of the projects that have been completed and the others that are still ongoing as well. Next slide. What we decided to do early on in the wake of the flood was, rather than having the state identify what all the projects were, we wanted to use this watershed coalition model. The page here, all of the watershed coalitions that were involved in the identification and prioritization of projects. 2 of these coalitions were already in place prior to the flood, but in large part, these were formed as a direct result of the flood through funding that the state provided and through technical assistance that Chris and his group provided as well. And what these coalitions did was they formed with a number of affected stakeholders within their own watershed, using the watershed view of all the problems that were occurring as a result that were still lingering from the flood, and prioritizing what projects needed to be done in order to solve these problems. So this was a grassroots effort, which I think has worked generally pretty well. And each one of these coalitions created a master plan that was then followed in order to identify the projects that were done in this program. So this is the scope of the program. And again, in addition to the 70 projects, these are the other tasks that we were tasked with completing in a relatively short period of time. So we had to identify the projects, secure the match funding, which wasn't easy. I mean, 7/8 of the project was funded either by the federal government or through our state disaster emergency fund. But a large number is still a fairly large number, and in a lot of cases, we had to identify some creative solutions to try to find this local cost share. Convincing over 500 landowners to participate. This was probably one of the hardest tasks involved. Most federal programs, private property, and I will say that after going through this program, I think I have an appreciation for why that is. Landowners can be difficult to work with, and they can be difficult to effort that has really largely fallen on Chris's shoulders with a little help from his consultants. But again, you can see the period there is about a 36-month period. So this is what we're trying to do through the program, not just protect life, safety, and property, but also enhance ecological, biological, and geological functions. All for the purpose of resiliency, which of course is a big buzzword these days, and it is involved in a lot of the projects that we do. I want to thank Colorado Parks and Wildlife for this pyramid. Chris and I like to show this in a lot of our presentations, but really you can kind of look at this from the bottom up here, and you can start with the river's hydrology and move up to the hydraulics. And I think that's where a lot of these recovery projects typically end. You might stabilize the stream banks. Depending on the program, you might increase the capacity of the stream for flood mitigation. But what we really wanted to look at in these projects in this program were things like sediment control and sediment management and other non-consumptive uses such as things like fish passage, recreational opportunities, and overall stream health. And I think the reason we have biology at the top there is, you know, whenever you look at the health of a stream going through a particular reach, I think the best litmus test for how healthy that stream is how well the organisms and the living functions within that stream reach are. So if you got good biology in the stream, that's usually a good sign that things are going right. So one of the other things that we really wanted to focus on during this program was designing for a spectrum of events. So obviously it was a flood that initiated this program, which is characterized with high flows. But we don't just want to look at the flood mitigation and the impacts that happen during high events. We also want to look at what happens during the low flows. Things that we list on here, such as the ecological and stream health, vegetation survival, and also the long-term stability. So we want to design our projects in such a way that they perform well at low flows as well as high flows, and that's been a cornerstone of our design throughout the program. So keep this in mind as this graphic here as you look at all of the pictures moving forward, and that is this multi-stage channel design. I always grew up as just a flood engineer, so you know, before I met Chris, it was always how much water can you get through a stream reach to prevent floods. And the importance of having these multiple stages, so that as the water goes up, it has some place to go. And that's good for a number of things, stream habitat, but also sediment management. And that's where we look for the stream stability. So you can see things such as a low flow channel, a bank flow elevation. And then as it gets a little bit higher, that's where you start looking at flood plains. But as long as you have those multiple stages, that's where you see the stability of the stream really increase. As part of our program, we created a number of documents. Many listed here and shown as well. I do want to draw your attention to that our website is on the bottom there. It's been such a big program, we decided it was worth creating a specific website so that we could direct end users to it as we went on. So it's coloradoewp.com. If you've never looked at it, check it out. We've got a lot of great information there. And a lot of these resources can really be used outside of this program to other restoration projects as well. In terms of what we have achieved thus far, we've got all the projects designed or nearing the end of design. We've had over 20 local consulting firms performing this design. So just managing that effort has been a pretty substantial effort in and of itself. Processes. Just ask Chris about this and see how that's been treating him lately. In addition to federal permitting processes, every local government has its own different permitting process that has to be followed, some which are easier to navigate than others. FEMA has been both good and difficult to work with throughout this process. They have their own regulations, which sometimes can be at cross purposes of what we're trying to do. Really, the biggest issue has been with the timeline. Many FEMA processes require what's called a conditional letter of map revision, which is a standard process associated with floodplain management. And it's something that we don't mind following on a regular basis, but the problem is it takes time to do. And in regards to the timelines and the durations of the projects that we had to do throughout this program, it was something that we just couldn't afford to go through. So it affected our design and maintenance projects so that we could avoid having to go through this. We did support NRCS on some cultural resource clearances. Every one of these projects had to go through NEPA clearances. So cultural resources was one of those, and we assisted with that. And then also going through the 404 permits at 4. So it's been a big effort up to this point. I won't go into too much detail, but this is kind of a geographic representation of where all the projects are. If you can see the green circles, those are the areas where the projects are done at this point. Are the ones where they're either started or they're about to start. And there's still a number of projects as well that you can note that aren't even blue yet. So we've got a number that are still waiting to begin in the next couple months. But you can see it's really throughout the northern Front Range, and then that inset down there is El Paso County and watershed. So I just want to quickly go through some just sample pictures. I was inundated with pictures that I could show you, but for time, I just wanted to select a few that will show a little bit about what things look like after the flood, but before projects, and then what they look like for post-construction. So this is 81st Street. This is in the left-hand watershed where we have a number of projects kind of fairly close to each other. You can see on the left what it looked like before with all the debris and extra vegetation. And you can kind of see how unstable it looked following the flood. On the right is a picture of what it looked like following construction. And I just want to kind of remind you of the graphic that you saw earlier with the multi-stage design. So you can see right here, it's kind of like in a low flow situation right now. But what will happen is if the water goes up just a little bit, then it has the opportunity to spread out over this bank full right here without impacting the entire 100-year floodplain. And when you look at what it looked like before, it didn't really have that opportunity. So we believe that it's a more stable channel right now. And if we get the same kind of hydration flows that we saw in 2013, we believe we'll be better able to withstand those. I'll kind of go through these fairly quickly. This is again in a similar area. Again, notice all the vegetation in the area and the kind of one-stage channel that we saw. This is what it looked like during construction. You see a lot of this, straw here. So a lot of the vegetation is not established yet. It will once all that goes in. Again, kind of more of the same. I'm just going to have to go through these here really quickly. These are all in the same area. Okay, let me stop here. Now down here, I shifted up to the North Fork of Big Thompson River in the Glen Haven area. So this is a before construction shot. The same principles. You can kind of see a wide, fairly flat channel right here, but also notice what was in place prior to our project, which are banks of riprap right here. And a lot of that was done in the phase 1 that I mentioned earlier. This is a great way to stabilize banks and prevent further this is really not the kind of look or stream function that we're looking for in the long term. And so, again, through this phase 2 process, we're trying to come through and kind of have a better approach to how this looks. So Andrew, if you can move forward. So this is what it looks like now. And again, this is before all the vegetation is developed and all that. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at it. But again, notice you've got a nice low flow channel right here that can spread out very easily in higher flows. So this was after construction, but prior to runoff season. And you're moving forward. So this is now following runoff season. And Big Thompson River had a pretty good runoff season. Not that it got real high, but it got high enough and had a pretty long duration. And so the fact that this was able to stay stable during a fairly long duration event, which usually causes significant amounts of erosion, I think this shows the success of this project. Kind of a little bit more of the same thing in the same area, but this time moving from, this is pre-flood taken from a Google Earth picture, and then this is post-flood right here. This was actually right after the flood in November of 2013. So look at all the debris and deposited sediments and vegetation in this area. This is what it looked like again after the initial stabilization that took place, and again a similar picture you saw before. And then one last shot also near the Glen Haven area. So again, I just want to draw your attention to the riprap on the side throughout the length, and also kind of a wide, shallow floodplain, which is great for capacity, but not so good for sediment management.
Can I interrupt you for just a second, Kevin? Back to the picture of the, do you have some numbers of how much more, or if it is more, to rebuild the stream where it's aesthetically pleasing versus just
that one? Chris, do you have an answer on that?
I don't have numbers on that.
Okay, that's what
We'll get back to you on that.
all right, thanks.
So again, this is what it looks like after the fact. So again, how the low flow is kind of channelized. I don't want to use the word channelized, but it's concentrated in a low flow area with the opportunity to easily expand as the water goes up. And this is a technique that we've used a lot throughout this program, which is these root wads. This is a natural feature that you can put in, and they've shown to be really good for dissipating stream energy as well as creating great areas of habitat. So just to close up, some of the challenges that we faced, some of these were unexpected. Many of these, now that we've been through it, we probably should have expected, and I think if we ever had to do this again, we'd probably a little bit easier. I'd say one of the bigger challenges we've had have been coordinating multiple federal programs. Just because it's all federal money, every program has different funding requirements, regulations, timelines, levels of oversight, and we've had to work with several of them at once. And trying to can sometimes feel like a game of Tetris, but after time, we've been able to generally make them work. We have had a number of adversarial relationships at all levels, and some of these I think just seem to be inherent. Others, they kind of pop up from time to time. Sometimes we have a great project going, and then the landowner gets cranky with us and he wants to change something at the last minute, and that can sometimes be a little testy. I will mention the contracting workloads. We actually hired a term-limited person to the watershed and flood staff to manage this, and our accountant Steve Shull has also been working overtime on this. But you can imagine trying to get we have to get federal or financial agreements with the federal government to start. Then we have to write a local contract with a local sponsor. Remember, there's 70 of these. Then we have to pay all these invoices and pay requests as they come through. We have to pay the local sponsor, and then we have to make a request for reimbursement from the NRCS. There's a number of moving parts, And throughout all this, we've had, for example, staff leading the fourth floor where our department accounting is. So my hat's off to everybody who's been working on the contracting part of this. It's been a truly enormous effort. Short program timeframes. I didn't mention this earlier, but when all of these financial agreements are funded, we have 220 days to build the project. And you look down at the costs on this spreadsheet, if your eyes can adjust to the small text, and some of these are multi-million-dollar projects. And you have 7 months to build it. And that includes various steps as well, putting it out to RFP, getting all the internal contracting done, and working through runoff season in some cases. We have planting seasons that we have to deal with. So it's a big planning effort, just trying to get the time frames to work out. And then I'll mention the unexpected on the bottom. We had a lot of these unexpecteds. The best example I can give is we were just about ready to get going on many projects in the Big Thompson Canyon, and then we found out in April that the Bureau of Reclamation is doing some repair work on the infrastructure for the Colorado Big Thompson project. And so right during the middle of our construction season, they were going to be sending flows down the Big Thompson River instead of through their CDT infrastructure. And so all of a sudden we realized we're going to be dealing with 400 to 600 CFS flow throughout these projects. And you saw that when you went on the Taylor Reservoir tour the other day. And you imagine trying to get equipment down and working in those kind of flows. So dealing with things like that, we have to kind of stay on our toes. Take the last slide, Andrew. So here's where we are today, and then I'll wrap up. All 70 projects are under the federal financial agreement. The last ones were signed up right around Memorial Day, so it started, we'll say more or less around June 1st. And remember, we have a 220-day clock, as I mentioned here, so that puts our end date around late December. For various reasons, we're not certain we're going to be done with all of the projects by then. I think several of them, yes, but we probably will be requesting extensions on some. It's, as long as you can show progress, it's fairly easy to get a 60-day extension that can be done at the regional level here. Some of these we may be asking for a longer extension than that, maybe in the neighborhood of 150 days. And that, unfortunately, has to go back to headquarters in Washington for them to make that decision. So that's not as sure of a thing. We've completed 17 projects already, 6 more are almost done, 17 others have started, and 30 of them we still have yet to start. So we've still got a lot of work ahead of us as we start this home stretch for this program that we expect to end first half of 2018. I think that's my last slide. So at that point, I'd be happy to answer questions, Mr. Chair, and I may ask Chris to step up and
Any questions for Ken? Director George.
I think you're a master of understatement. I'm just stunned about the progress that you're making. None of this is the kind of stuff that happens fast, and yet you are making progress. Watching deadlines, I just think it's a monumental success thus far. Good work.
Thank you, Director George. I really appreciate those kind words. It has been certainly a very extensive effort. Chris, you probably have good days and bad days, right? You're right. I can't understate or overstate enough how busy he is, but he's really been killing me on this project.
Further questions? Well, thanks, Kevin, and thank you, Chris. That was really a very good presentation, and we truly appreciate it. With that, we are scheduled to go on a break. Let's be back after 11 o'clock and ready to continue on with the agenda.
Good morning, Chris Stern, CWCB staff, for the record, presenting a Fish and Wildlife Resources Fund application from the Buckhorn Valley Metropolitan District for the Abrams Creek Cutthroat Trout Recovery Project. Briefly, I'll start by describing the project. And thank Nellie Whiting with Trout Unlimited for being here, one of the partners. Strain of cutthroat trout. I won't get into the genetics of it because I'll show my ignorance on that one. But I've been told by CPW it's one of their highest priorities for protection. And I believe this project has also been identified in the Colorado Basin Implementation Plan as a high priority project as well. The Buckhorn District has a diversion, I believe it's called the JPO ditch, that takes water from the creek to the town of Gypsum. That's correct. And they estimate that it can lose up to 40% of that diversion to ditch loss along the way. So the proposal here is to pay for a pipeline to avoid that ditch loss and then dedicate that water to the creek for the benefit of the cutthroat trout. There's also a proposal to put in a fish screen so we don't lose those trout down the ditch. I've reviewed this application. I'd also like to thank Linda Bassi and Brenna Medford from my office from CWCB for reviewing the application as well. We have found it in conformance with Board Policy 15, which is included in your packet. If approved, I believe, and this is already happening, that BLM is working with CWCB on an in-stream flow recommendation so that the new flows in Abrams Creek can be preserved for the cutthroat trout. I've also read the agreement between Trout Unlimited and the Buckhorn District, and I believe personally that what we're looking at there is a stream management plan. I know that I'm tasked with delivering a lot on stream management plans, so I'm going to find them wherever I can. And for folks that think stream management planning is incredibly esoteric, this may be an interesting place to start. It's something as simple as an agreement between Trout Unlimited and the Buckhorn District here essentially illustrates what stream management planning can achieve. They have a good handle on what the hydrology is. They have an objective, the cutthroat trout population, and they understand the habitat and the needs for that habitat in Abrams Creek. And so I look at this as merely an implementation of a stream management plan that I think they've been working on since 2011. That's correct. So with that, I've got a recommendation to approve a non-reimbursable expenditure of up to $550,000 from the Fish and Wildlife Resources Fund for the purpose of providing matching dollars to the Abrams Creek Cutthroat Trout Recovery Project. And I'll open it up for questions.
Questions for Chris? John or Melly, would you like to address the board? We definitely appreciate you making the trip over here.
Hi, I'm John Hill, president of Buckhorn Metro. CPW approached the original landowner and water rights owner over 20 years ago, and they said no way. And then 17 years ago, they approached the then developer who purchased water rights, and he said no way. So 10 years ago, we became got control of the district, and we started with CPW on this. And 7 years ago, we started working with Melody, and it's been a long road. If you folks approve this, we will be able to start construction this fall. So we highly appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Not a whole lot more to add. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Well, thanks for making the trip over. This is an action item. Director George.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Colorado River Basin Roundtable has worked with these folks right along and very much in support of it. Studied the project from that point of view. I think it's got a lot to be said for it. I move that we adopt staff recommendation.
Motion by Director George, second by Director Wells, to move staff recommendation. Further discussion? Call for the motion. All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 10. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. For the record, John Basler, Water Conservation Board staff. Again, agenda item 10, these are the uncontested 27 in-stream flow appropriations on both Little Sand and Lower Cedar Creek in Water Division 7. At your March board meeting, I presented you with an overview of these streams, and you formed your intent to appropriate at that time. Both of these stream segments were uncontested and are now ready for board action. During that meeting, again, I provided you all the field data, the studies, the analyses that allow you to make the 3 statutory determinations that you're required to make regarding the natural environment, water availability, and no injury to other water rights. Directors Hawkins, Dutton, and Gilbert did not have the opportunity to see that presentation or have the information, so I sent that information to them within the last month so that they could review that and vote today. And with that, I will open it up to questions to either those new directors, if they have any specific questions on the recommendations, or other board members before I read the recommendation into the record.
Questions for Jeff? Please proceed.
I always read the recommendation into the record. A little bit different sometimes. I don't usually try to summarize it. I read it directly because in the past we have had instances where people have challenged us and said, "Did you act with the board actually make those specific findings that are required by statute?" So I just want to make sure all the legal I's are dotted, and that's why I do this. Staff requests that the board make the following determination and take the following actions on each of the appropriations identified in the attached tables based on the information contained in this memo, as well as the information presented by staff both in writing and orally at the March 23rd, 2017 board meeting. 1, determine pursuant to section 3792, 102, and 3, CRS 2016, and based upon the recommendation of the U.S. Forest Service addressing biological needs, flow rates, reaches, and time periods, and review of the data and other information presented by staff in this memo and orally, that each of the in-stream flow appropriations in the amounts identified in the attached table, A, there is a natural environment that can be preserved to a reasonable degree for the recommended water rights if granted. B, natural environment will be preserved to a reasonable degree by the water available for the recommended appropriations, and C, environment can exist without material injury to water rights. 2, pursuant to ISF Rule 5F established March 23rd, 2017 as the appropriation date for these water rights, and 3, direct staff to request the Attorney General's office to file the necessary water rights applications.
Your motion. Director George.
I move that we adopt staff recommendations on agenda item 9 as presented by staff.
It's been moved by Director George. Is there a second? Second by Director Hawkins. Further agenda item number 10. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Let's move to agenda item number 11.
Good morning, members of the board. Brent Newman, CWCB staff. As Carly told you at the last meeting and Director Mitchell mentioned this morning, Steve Miller has ridden off into the well-deserved retirement sunset after a career with the board that spanned 26 years here working on these issues. I'm assuming Steve's responsibilities within the Interstate Federal and Water Information section. So I'll be presenting the next 2 agenda items. To begin with, this is agenda item 11. This is the Colorado River Basin Salinity Control Forum's 2017 review. It's been a couple of years since Steve presented about the salinity control program to our board. So Carly and I thought it'd be a good idea to do it today, just for a refresher for more of our tenured board members, kind of an update for the newer board members, and for me as the new support staff on this program. The Salinity Control Forum is a really good example of a federal state partnership that has demonstrated really good benefits to the entire Colorado River Basin. This year, the forum has released for its public comment the 2017 review of the water quality standards for salinity in the Colorado River system. This triannual document provides information about the history of salt loading in the Colorado River, existing programs to deal with this challenge, and the water quality standards and plan of implementation to deal with this salt problem. Today, I'm going to walk you through some of these same topics that are going to be covered in the review, which was released last week. First, a background of some of the salt problems, some of the statutes that deal with this challenge on the river, and some of the on-the-ground efforts that are ongoing. And to begin on this, I'm going to show a very brief video. This is something the forum put together last year, and it was kind of spearheaded by our partners with the Central Arizona Project. It does a really good job of kind of introducing you to some of the salt control problems and partners on the river.
The Colorado River flows through lands that were once covered by ancient seas, which left behind highly saline sediments. As measured at Hoover Dam, about half of the salt concentration in the Colorado River comes from natural sources, such as flows from saline springs and seeps, and the erosion of these saline soils. Human activity generates the other half through irrigation runoff and wastewater discharge. As this animation illustrates, irrigation flows result in the leaching of salts from soils through deep percolation. This process, in connection with groundwater flow and discharge into the river, results in the greatest single category of human-caused salt loading on the river. The Colorado River Salinity Control Act of 1974 mandates the implementation of control programs to reduce the salinity of the Colorado River. Title II of this act created the Colorado River Basin Salinity Control Program. This unique effort focuses on improving the Colorado River's water quality for U.S. users. Partnered in this effort are the federal government's Bureau of Reclamation, Natural Resources Conservation Service, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Geological Survey, Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Environmental Protection Agency. The 7 basin states working collectively as the Colorado River Basin Salinity Control Forum, and hundreds of water districts, water user organizations, canal and ditch companies, along with thousands of individual water users and producers. The Colorado River Salinity Control Program primarily implements 2 different improvement strategies: off-farm irrigation water delivery improvements, such as canal lining. Ditches are implemented through the Bureau of Reclamation's Basin-wide program, and on-farm irrigation improvement practices are implemented through the Natural Resources Conservation Services Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP. This program provides assistance to land owners who implement water efficiency improvement practices, such as sprinklers, which reduce runoff, deep percolation, and the leaching of salt into the Colorado. Additional salinity control is achieved through capture and disposal of naturally occurring saline springs and seeps, implemented by both federal and state agencies. The plugging of abandoned oil and gas wells, BLM management practices on federal lands, and the administration of National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits by the states to ensure compliance with salinity standards as mandated by the Federal Clean Water Act. All of these efforts are focused on preventing additional salt from reaching the Colorado River.
This is sort of a 30,000-foot point of view on the program. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the issues that the video touched on. This board needs introduction to the Colorado River Basin. So this is the challenge. The basin, the forum, the Colorado River water users is this natural and anthropogenic salt loading into this crucial source of water. This photo right here was taken on the west slope, I think, right outside Delta. Just sort of demonstrates some of the salt deposits in the soils. Here are a couple of graphics to demonstrate the sources of salinity to this river system. This USGS map shows some of the deposits of salt in these highly saline areas that are sort of the remnant of the prehistoric sea that covered most of this area. I'll touch on this later, but an interesting point to remember is when the EPA was first considering these salinity standards, they considered a state line standard. If you just look at some of the sources of salinity in the Yampa Basin, the Lower Gunnison, and the Colorado River, that would have been a really tough pill for the Colorado water users to swallow. The basin-wide standards that the forum came up with and were approved by EPA are definitely better for Colorado water users. This pie chart demonstrates the different sources of salinity for the Colorado River. And as you can see by that chart, it's about half and half, natural and then anthropogenic salt loading. Salt loading, you have saline springs, groundwater discharges such as in the Grand Valley. You have the evaporation and transport of salt through erosion, as this picture shows in Price, Utah. And you have hot springs like Wilburton Springs in Utah or Glenwood Springs here in Colorado. As far as human-caused salt loading, the deep percolation and transport of salts to the river through traditional flood irrigation practices is the main source of human salt loading. The water from irrigation reaches the highly saline mangrove shell and is transported to the Colorado River through groundwater. Another human-caused source of salt loading is reservoir evaporation. You have the infamous bathtub rains at Lake Mead and Lake Powell, and these reservoirs draw down the water that remains is more highly saline. This chart sort of breaks down some of the salinity-related damages that can be an effect of this salt loading into the river. We look at agricultural damages, you're thinking crop damage in Imperial Valley, Coachella, around Yuma, Arizona. When you're looking at household, commercial, or utility damages, this can be from the continued cost of replacing a faucet in your house to a big municipal provider having to pay a lot more money to just for maintenance of their systems. So in response to these kind of damages, Congress enacted the Colorado River Basin Salinity Control Act in 1974. Title I, like the video mentioned, addresses the U.S.'s commitment to Mexico and the operations of the Yuma desalting plant. Title II is a section which concerns the forum and the basin states. It's a series of control measures, salinity control measures upstream of Imperial Dam. The original act administered or authorized these 4 units to be administered by the Bureau. One in the Grand Valley, one in Crystal Geyser in Utah, Colorado, and the Las Vegas Wash. The Salinity Control Act was amended in 1984 to authorize 2 additional units to be administered by the Bureau. It also authorized USDA's on-farm salinity control program, which we now know is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP. And also, if you remember the pie chart that showed so much salt loading coming from rangelands, the Bureau of Land Management was also directed to develop a program for minimizing salt contributions from their rangelands and the lands that BLM administers. These are the 2 additional units that were authorized: Lower Gunnison and McCumber Creek in the southwest part of the state. This map of the Upper Basin shows the areas where NRCS is working to reduce salt loading through the EQIP program. You have 5 salinity control areas here in Colorado, the biggest being Lower Gunnison. These sort of salinity control efforts are cost-shared on-farm improvements to irrigation systems, upgrading to drip or sprinkler irrigation to reduce the amount of deep percolation and thus the salt that makes it to the Colorado River. In 1995, the Salinity Control Act was amended yet again, and this created the Bureau of Reclamation's basin-wide program. For the first time, public applications for funding were accepted. Reclamation solicits new projects and ranks them on cost effectiveness, so the amount of dollars spent per ton removed from the river, and different risk factors. These projects then receive grant funding for off-farm salinity control measures. Yeah, all the way back. Projects include the following. So this is the reclamation projects that have happened in Western Colorado. We've had 3 projects in the Grand Valley, 15 in Lower Gunnison, and 1 in the southwest part of the state on the Conway Creek. And canals, such as the Grandview Canal in Crawford, the Lone Pine Canal in Cortez, or the Lanyon Canals like this one in the Grand Valley. The Basin States program was created by another amendment to the Salinity Control Act in 2008, And Cindy Blair is here from the Department of Ag, and she'll talk a little bit about that program, her role in it, in a few minutes. It's administered by the Bureau of Reclamation in consultation with the Forum and the Colorado River Basin Salinity Control Advisory Council. These are projects which could be administered by Reclamation in partnership with state ag agencies in Colorado, Wyoming, or Utah. There's likely a competitive process such as the Bureau of Reclamation's funding opportunity announcement process or through NRCS batching. These are projects which, for one reason or another, do not qualify for the basin-wide program of reclamation or through NRCS's EPA program, but they are recognized as a general benefit to overall salinity control projects and can be managed by Reclamation or the different state agricultural agencies. That was a walk through some of the various statutes and the different federal program on the ground trying to reduce salt loading in the Colorado River. Now I'm going to focus a little bit on the forum itself and the regulations that sort of brought forward the forum's inception. The forum met for the first time in 1973 in anticipation of EPA regulation of salinity levels in the Colorado River. The 7 basin states want to get their ducks in a row and come up with some proposed regulations if possible. As I mentioned in that graph of the levels of salt loading in Colorado, the different basin states really wanted a basin-wide standard instead of a state-line standard. EPA published this regulation in June 1974, and in the December regulation that came out of that required the states to submit salinity control standards by October in 1975. The state's proposal was the first review of water quality standards. It was proposed in 1975 and approved later that year. Reviewed and renewed every 3 years, so this 2017 review I mentioned that came out last week will be the 14th edition since 1975. The water quality standard itself is twofold. You have the numeric criteria, and you have the plan of implementation, as spelled out in EPA's 1974 regulation. First, the numeric criteria are based on 1972 salinity data. The goal of the numeric criteria is to, as indicated on the slide, is to maintain salinity levels at or below the 1972 levels of salinity at 3 different locations in Colorado River. The numeric criteria are measured at 3 locations: below Hoover, below Parker, and at Imperial Dam. And these are the numeric criteria themselves: 723 milligrams per liter at Hoover, 747 at Parker, and 879 at Imperial. That kind of shows how we've done since 1970 at keeping the numeric criteria in accordance with the standards. So the green line is at Imperial, and the blue line is at below Hoover, with the dotted lines representing the numeric criteria themselves. The second part of the standard is the plan of implementation. And there are 3 parts of the plan of implementation. The salinity control measures I mentioned earlier, which are undertaken by Reclamation in partnership with the basin states, NRCS, and BLM practices. The second is the adoption of forum adopted policies by each of the states. This is usually policies regulating salinity and how it's managed within the state. This is usually the purview of CDPHE and the Water Quality Control Division. For those who are curious about the review, we just posted it last week on our website, and for more information about these policies, look at Appendix B of the review. And finally, implementation of non-point source management plans developed by the states and approved by EPA, which can all be found by state in Appendix C of the 2017 review. These are the first part of the plan implementation are these salinity control measures, which I kind of tapped through earlier. The 2017 review was released by the forum last week. As specified in the Clean Water Act and the first review, they're reviewed every 3 years. It's updated by the forum with the work group and the technical advisory group. And these are the chapter headings in the review. The review is concise and it kind of walks you through just about sort of problems with salt loading in the Colorado River, some of the programs that are in place, and the statutory authority for those programs, and then the numeric criteria, how this can be updated, and the plan of implementation moving forward. The forum asked states to put the 2017 review up for public comment through our own existing processes. So these are the ways that we're going to do it. We posted on the website last week as soon as it was released to the public. We'll be accepting comments through August 25th, either directed to myself or to the forum directly. And it will also be in the Confluence newsletter and the July Director's Report, as well as Twitter, if anyone reads about some of these things on Twitter. Really quickly, I want to thank the few people from Reclamation, the Salinity Control Forum, and the Central Arizona Project who helped me put together some of the slides for this project. big project partners in this program. First is Cindy Laird, Cindy's with the Department of Ag and the State Conservation Board, and they played a crucial role in kind of working with us on the Sunday Control Forum and then work group and technical advisory group.
Well, good morning. Good morning. And I just wanted to welcome the new members and also congratulate the board. I think you made a wonderful choice for your director, and it's a pleasure to be a partner with the Colorado Water Conservation Board as always. In about 1995, the Water Conservation Board asked the State Conservation Board, then it was an agency in DNR, to take on the Basin State Salinity Control side of the program. And it worked out very well because there were 6 conservation districts within those salinity areas that worked out really well to implement and take those dollars and hire the contractors to put those projects on the ground. Those 6 conservation districts that could participate, a lot of districts wanted to but could not, were the Book Cliff, the Mesa Delta Conservation District, Chavano Conservation District, Mancos, and the Dolores, which is now regarded as the high desert. And we, for quite some time, were getting upwards of $2.5 million annually to put into these local on-farm and near-farm irrigation improvement projects. And I can tell you that the conservation districts lived to help modernize their irrigation infrastructure at that local level, and help, and being that type of an assistance to the landowners. We offered through our program such a streamlined approach to improving irrigation systems that a lot of the producers quickly found out that it was easier than going through the NRCS EQIP process. And so we decided to pull back because we realized EQIP dollars were not being used and sent back, and that wasn't good. So it was changed to a program that instead of competing with EQIP, it was necessary for us to have EQIP ineligible projects. And so those might be the landowner had a higher AGI, or maybe they'd exceeded their amount of money that they've gotten already from USDA. And so during that time, I would say since in the last 5 years, we've had a lot of challenges to deal with in the implementation of this program, as we had reduced levels in Lake Mead and Lake Powell, those dams that provide the funding source for the Basin States program through their power generation revenues. Those started drying up, and so we started getting a lot less money. And most of the cost-effective projects that we've done were probably done in the last 10 or 15 years. And so we decided at one point to really focus in on the lower Gunnison, because if you look at the salt loading charts from the Sparrow models, the largest amount of salt that's agriculturally caused in the whole basin really is in the lower Gunnison. And so we have a lot of challenges there. We have over 200 ditch companies or ditches in that area in just Delta County alone. And so we really needed somebody to help organize those groups and to be able to get them ready to be able to compete for federal salinity dollars for further irrigation modernization. So, and I would point out Beth Carver, you've heard from her probably a few times in the past, bringing projects forward from that salinity program. So sadly, our funding has fallen on hard times. We're now down to about $100,000 a year. And so I don't have funding to cater. And so I've been doing more of the coordination from the Broomfield office area, which is challenging. But I should say that the conservation districts still have a great passion to be able to participate. And I think the Department of Agriculture does too. We see great value to Western Slope irrigation and agriculture. But I know I can say that the salinity conservation districts greatly appreciate the contributions from the CWCB to help provide technical assistance for that program. And with the help of Carly and Dave Kanzer and Brent, we are working right now with the Salinity Work Group to be able to restructure this program. So we will be ramping back up, I think, so that we can continue to provide these irrigation improvements and be able to improve ag water beneficial use in Western Colorado. Thank you very much for allowing me to tell you about what we do.
Question for Cindy. Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce another crucial partner to the Salinity Control Program as a partner to CWCB and a representative on the work group. And that's Dave Kanzer. He's the Deputy Chief Engineer for the Colorado River Water Conservation District.
Good morning or good afternoon for the record, Dave Kanzer, Colorado River District.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I know a lot of you, but not all of you, so it's a pleasure to be here and make your acquaintance and talk about this extremely important program. I didn't really have any prepared remarks, but 2 or 3 themes I want to hit on. One is a lot of appreciation for your staff, your board, for the support over the years. As Brent mentions, this program's been around a long time. And we've had at Colorado River District a long history with this, and it's absolutely crucial for our ag producers as they struggle to keep up with trying to modernize their infrastructure and become more efficient. So it's really basically an extremely important and successful story that we want to highlight, and an amazing partnership. It's a very cooperative program, as you heard. We have a lot of folks here participate, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to not only reduce the salt load. Again, the story goes deeper because it's about modernizing without these funds, without this cooperation. We're basically, operating with 100-year-old systems. And so putting these open ditches into pipe, coming up with new techniques, technology to reduce depopulation and seepage. It's an amazingly good story.
Try to log in.
So,
And it needs to ask you for
Brent went over
login
the charts pretty quickly, but on that one chart, you saw we're well
07
below
red light.
standards. Important to the lower basin, and they're also a big partner in this Arizona project, Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. They're investing millions of dollars annually through reclamation and through the Basin States Partnership. So the appreciation, I want to reiterate the technical assistance that you're providing for these ditch companies to be competitive in this program, and really want to thank you for that. And you're going to hear from me a few times today. My theme, again, is a recurring theme about modernizing agricultural infrastructure, sustain agriculture on the West Slope without proper programs like this. And so just want to thank you again, and happy to keep it short and take any questions if you have some.
Questions for Dave? I don't think so. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Conclusion of that vision, if you guys have any more questions or comments about the program or our partners.
Director Young.
Thanks, Brent. And it looks like I want to commend you on a good program. It looks like you're doing a lot of good work there, and thank you for that work. I was part of a Colorado Cattlemen's and Environmental Work Group a few years back, and we toured some of the Western Slope and some of the Eastern Slope. And one of the things on the Western Slope that was discussed as part of that was sometimes in some areas, the ditches divert their fully decreed amount when they're not using their fully decreed amount. And I would think that if those reduced to what they were using at the time, that would reduce some of the salinity load maybe. And I was just wondering if that was discussed at any time, and what you think if that would help.
I'm also going to find a friend and call in DK for that.
So I was listening, but maybe you could just quickly repeat the question.
When I was over on the Western Slope as part of a group, one of the things that was discussed at that time was sometimes the ditches divert their fully decreed amount when they're only using a lower amount. And I was just wondering if there was any discussion on just perhaps just diverting what you use at the time, and if that would help in the salinity load at all.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, what you're talking about is basically efficiency, increasing efficiency, and this program does that. Now, water rights are a tricky business, as you know, but essentially we are seeing more water in the streams at certain times based on these improvements. So the diversion amount can be decreased and has been in certain areas where you have these efficiency gains. Now, having said that, there's a lot of diversity, shall we say, in the geography, in the irrigation types, and so it's not one size fits all. But I think your point's a good one. These efficiency gains, these modernization techniques are good for everybody. And what it can also do, if you do have a reduced diversion, you have lands that are previously not fully served, you can, and they've been irrigated, but not sort of getting the short end of the stick, they can be fully or more fully irrigated. Or the next junior appropriator who's been short can benefit. So it's a really good story from that perspective, the efficiency gains. And I know you talk about this a lot, about how to leverage those efficiency gains, and we could talk much longer about this efficiency versus conservation and the access to storage and how to capture and retime that. But we are working on that, and we have seen great benefits. So I appreciate the question. One thing I did forget to mention, if I can go on a little bit longer, is thanks to the forum members. And we didn't get a chance to mention how the forum works, but each state, 7 basin states, each have 3 representatives. And James Eklund, David Robbins, and right now it's Pat Falstrapt from Division of Water Quality, are serving in that role. And we want to thank them and acknowledge their hard work, especially David Robbins, who you may know is probably the longest serving forum member. And so an amazing support there as well. So thanks.
Further questions for David? Thanks, that was a wonderful presentation. Let's move on to agenda item number 12.
That's awesome. Brent Newman, CWCB staff, with agenda item number 12, technical assistance for federal cost share. At the May meeting, the board approved the criteria and the approval procedures for this technical assistance for cost share, federal cost share program. Since that meeting, the Bureau of Reclamation has held 2 meetings in Western Colorado. This public interest and sort of listening sessions for people who might be interested in applying for this next round of Reclamation's funding opportunity announcement, which I kind of mentioned in the breakdown of the salinity control program. This is the way Reclamation kind of opens up they have a fund program on the ground to do these off-farm improvements for salinity control measures. At these meetings and working with our partner conservation districts in Westwood, I started speaking to some ditch companies and conservancy districts who are interested in applying for these grants. The FOA will probably open up in mid-August and run through late November for an application period. These partner districts, we're seeking board approval in this agenda item to execute 3 purchase orders with our partner districts. It will assist CWCB staff in distributing and managing some of these technical assistance grants on the Western Slope. The idea here is to help Colorado water users put together the best competitive applications for these salinity control projects and ag efficiency improvements. I do have a staff recommendation, but first, I'd like to introduce Beth Harper. Beth is the salinity coordinator for the Lower Gunnison Basin with the Department of Ag, and she's been working on the ground with some of these conservation districts and some of the ditch companies and potential applicants. And she's going to talk a little bit about the partnership between CWCB and these folks on the ground.
Thanks, Glenn. Beth Harper, salinity coordinator for the Lower Gunnison Basin. I work under Cindy and work closely with the conservation districts and the irrigation companies in the Lower Gunnison to assist them to participate in the basin-wide salinity control program. I'm gonna make just three maybe critical points. One that Cindy brought to you is that the assistant grants and being able to partner with CWCB is a critical role for these conservation districts. It helps keep them going, and it helps them to be a very valuable resource on the ground to help their local constituents and water users in these areas. And so they send their great thanks and appreciation to you for allowing them to play this valuable role. Also, I want to just bring to your attention that the basin-wide salinity control program are implementation-only grants. And when I took on this role a little over 2.5 years ago, it was clearly evident what can happen when you have implementation funding without adequate planning funding ahead of time. These technical assistance grants really play a key role in helping put together better planned projects so that we can put these significant federal funds to the best possible use. As a focus area for the salinity control program, the Lower Gunnison is receiving $15 to $20 million every funding cycle. So, and we anticipate that that will be continued. The salinity control program gets about $30 to $40 million per every 2 to 3 year funding cycle. So if we presume and hope that that funding continues, there's significant implementation planning or implementation funds coming to the Lower Gunnison, and these technical assistance funds are really key to putting that funding to good use. It also helps the disparate and widely varying irrigation companies be able to participate in this program. We have a lot of small irrigation companies in this area, and technical assistance grants are really key to allowing them to participate and bring these federal funds to the area to, as Dave said, update and maintain these 100-year-old irrigation systems. So those are the thoughts that I really wanted to share with you, and I'm welcome to take any questions as well.
Questions for Beth? Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it.
As a brief reminder for the board, the concept behind this program is to create these competitive applications, not only in the salinity control program, but also potentially the NRCS's Regional Conservation Partnership Program, the Bureau of Reclamation's Water Smart Program, and other leverageable federal funds. Staff recommendation on this one. Staff recommends that the board approve purchase orders be executed in the amounts as follows. $99,000 to Delta Conservation District, $33,000 to Chamonix Conservation District, and $44,000 to Nicholas Conservation District. These funds shall be utilized to provide technical assistance for applicants seeking competitive federal grant funds consistent with the 2017 fiscal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there are no questions from the board, I would move that we approve the staff recommendation.
Recommended by Bob. Second by Director Beyond. Move staff recommendation. Agenda item number 12. Further discussion. Director Hawkins.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for the work with this conservation district. I know that that's a little bit more, and they're doing really great work on this funding announcements.
We're really excited about it too.
Further discussion. Hearing none, call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Let's move to agenda item number 13. Update on the Flat River Recovery Implementation Program.
Good morning. Suzanne Sellers, CWCB staff. I'm here to give you an update on the Platte River Recovery Implementation Program. It's been about 3 years since I've given an update. I'm passing around the biennial report from the program, and though my presentation is going to be slightly different because it covers 3 years rather than 2. The program originally began in 2007, and the governance committee is made up of several members from each of the states, Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska. As you know, or many of you may know, Donna Mitt is Colorado's appointee to the governance committee, and I'm his alternate. And then I also attend several of the other subcommittees associated with the program. Also on the governance committee are several environmental NGOs based out of Nebraska, and then water users from North Platte in Wyoming, South Platte in Colorado, and then Central Platte in Nebraska. The program was originally planned to run its first increment through the end of 2019. Recently, the governance committee agreed to an extension to the first increment, and that first increment would extend to 2032. That extension would allow the program to have more time to complete some of the goals of the first increment, which I'll talk about more. But one of the things I wanted to mention is that the governance committee has agreed upon this extension. It's not a done deal yet. It'll have to be a EIS, and then the states of the governors of each state and the Department of the Secretary of Interior will have to sign off on that, as well as federal legislation. So the work's not done, but I'm going to include information on the extension as I go along. One of the key driving factors in the program for the water users, the big thing is it allows water users from all 3 states to achieve compliance with Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act. And for the environmental groups and the Department of Interior, it allows for the recovery of 4 endangered species. Those species are the whooping crane, the least tern, piping plover, and then you could say we won't do any harm to the pallid sturgeon, although we're also supposed to be recovering, but pallid's downstream a bit. So the birds are the major focus of the program. Here's a map showing the 3 states, and this area right here is the major bird habitat from Lexington to Chapman in Nebraska, and the program's run out at Kearney here right in the middle. Just for reference, later on, here's North Platte, where the North Platte and South Platte come together, and the Platte meets up with the mouth, or the mouth of the Platte meets up with the Missouri here. So one of the first things I like to talk about is money, because we like to talk about money. So for the originally agreed upon first increment, the feds had a heavy load, and they agreed to put in 177 million. And these numbers are different than what's in the memo because they've been inflated to October 2016. And so if you check the two, what's in your memo is based on $2,005. Colorado current obligation for the original increment is 27 million, and the General Assembly so far has appropriated 27.4, and that includes interest that we acquire The money is actually sitting in Nebraska, and we get a little bit of money through CDs, and so I've included that amount in the amount that's been appropriated. Wyoming contributes 6.8, and for the extension, each of the Colorado and Wyoming are still contributing funds, and the federal agency is now contributing 78 million. The other component, besides money, states are also contributing water to the program. And the way it's broken out is before the plat program, they called it the cooperative agreement. And those negotiations have been going on since the 90s. And they picked the date of 1997. And all depletions that occurred from water activities prior to 1997, they call that existing depletions. And each of the states together as a group agreed to come up with 80,000 acre feet to cover all existing depletions. And then the program also agreed to come up with 50 to 70,000. And when I say the program compared to the states, it's the program and the staff that as a group are coming up with that 50 to 70K, while each of the states on their own come up with. For instance, Colorado does 10,000 acre feet a year, and then we also cover we also are obligated to cover any new depletions that have occurred since 1990. So we come up with 10K and a small amount of money or a small amount of water each year that goes up a little bit each year, which is based on population growth for those missing Colorado. One of the ways that we cover these water obligations is through what we call the Tamarack program. And it's broken out into three parts. Tamarack 1 it's based on covering those existing depletions. And that's what we do is we pump water from the river, put it in recharge ponds, and it retimes it so that it comes in at times of deficit when there's shortage to target flows in the habitat downstream. And so when they pump Tamarack, it has to be in priority within Colorado's water law, as well as we can't pump when there's a deficit in Nebraska. And then that retiming allows us to basically store and release, so to speak, water when it's needed. Tamarack 2 is designed to address the depletions that are growing each year based on population growth. And that's designed slightly differently, but it works pretty much the same way in that the idea is that we pump water when there's more return flows in the river from population growth. And then it comes back, it's aimed to come back to the river when there's more of a net deficit based on population growth. So we try to basically move water from the winter to the May and June. And right now, we're mitigating an average of 2,000 acre feet a year. And over time, like I said, that'll go up a little bit. Right now, the way that the Tamarack project is set up, it's located out at the Tamarack Ranch State Wildlife Area. Currently, there's 16 wells, 12 recharge ponds, and there's also a slough that the CPW uses for some of their habitat. Currently, this summer, they're going to jack and bore under I-76 so that they can put some ponds farther out, further away from the river to improve the timing. I believe the notice to proceed has been issued for that, so that should happen in due time. So adding 4 more recharge ponds, and CPW did the design, so thank you. And SPRAP, which stands for South Platte Water Related Activities Program, they are actually paying for the construction of the ponds and the jack and bore under the freeway. Just want to stop for a second and explain what SPRAP is. They're a group of water users within the South Platte, and they collect dues or membership fees based on population. And by being a member of SPRAP, it allows those members to take advantage of the streamlined Section 7 consultations. And so they provide money and support in an organization for water users to contribute to the Platte River program and receive. Also, during the 2015, Tamarack was flooded out, and so CPW is working with FEMA to try to get funds to repair that work. But although there was some flooding, the project is still operating. And then in addition to the actual Tamarack, the project located on Tamarack State Wildlife Area. So under that umbrella, the state has contributed the monies to a project called Hayborn that's run by, that was created through Ducks Unlimited. And because of that partnership, we get credits toward our, for recharge. And then also SPRAP leases recharge credits from other recharge ponds throughout the lower. So it's all under the Tamarack umbrella, but the state has its hand in 2 specific projects. As just like Tamarack at the State Wildlife Area, the Hayborn project suffered quite a bit of loss in the 2013 flood. And I just wanted to include these photos. This is what it looked like before 2013. The river is here, and they had this slough where water can come in, and they put a pump there, and that's the manifold. And I'll give you this is I guess a historical slough here, and the same spot on the this new picture from 2015 is right here. So you can see that the river came in and scooped all of this out right here and basically destroyed the project. So Ducks Unlimited came in and we used some species conservation trust money to help out. They built these 2 ponds here, and there's an infiltration gallery right here, and they're connected through a pipe. Right after they finished, then the 2015 flood came through, and it fared much better. I don't have a picture of that, but I do know that they've had to tweak some things, and they have a little bit more trouble with sedimentation and getting water flowing through there. They're still working on that, but I just wanted to show you how dynamic it is down there on the lower South Platte, and that's a challenge that SPRAP and CPW have been working on for the last several years. Switching over to what the program is doing for water. Right now, there are several projects they're working on. There's roughly 12,000 acre feet that the governance committee has officially blessed as far as giving it a score or taking action on. In addition to this 12,000 acre feet. They're actively looking at slurry wall pits and broad scale recharge. And instead of calling it buy and dry, the program likes to call it acquire and retire. And so those projects are also underway. An example of one of the projects that contributes water each year is the Pathfinder project. That's a project in Wyoming where they raised the spillway of Pathfinder Dam, and not only did it provide Wyoming with their water, their 20,000 acre feet of obligation to the program, they also leased water to the program through the first increment, and they made a similar obligation to lease water at a really decent rate, roughly $60 an acre foot to the program. So we're really thankful for their generosity in that case. Another piece of the water component of the program is dealing with what they call the choke point. That's on the North Platte River right before it hits, joins with the South Platte River. And I think I've told you before that they've been doing various flood proofing projects. This year they're working on, let's see, reactivating what they call the state channel. So this channel right here used to connect with the Platte before a lot of development happened. And there's also a channel right here that comes down. Somebody came along and they decided, one of these homeowners decided that they wanted some flow in here. And so they blocked this channel. The problem is they're susceptible to flooding now, and they also have high groundwater problems. And so this summer they're going to go in and revitalize this state channel that we hope will help with the groundwater as well as surface water flooding. The whole idea is to do these flood-proofing projects so that we can convince the NOAA to raise the flood stage so that these homeowners are not flooded out or their fields aren't flooded out. And so one of the pieces of information I wanted to pass along about the extension is the Fish and Wildlife Service really wants to increase the flow in the river, and in the original agreement, the first increment, we made a commitment to try to increase the flow to 3,000 CFS at this point. We're not convinced we can do that, but we did agree that if there's enough money available and it's practical, then as we get through the extension, we will attempt to go more than 3,000. But there's enough caveat there that if the river's not going to allow us to do it, or if FEMA doesn't want to go above 3,000 CFS, then we're not going to lie. Another component of the program is the land program. The original first increment required that the program obtain 10,000 acres of habitat down in Nebraska. And to date, they required almost 13,000, and they need only 60,000 more of what they call off-channel sand and water habitat to meet that goal. One of the negotiating points in the extension was the Fish and Wildlife Service wanted an additional complex, and what they do is they try to create complexes of land in between each 7-mile bridge segment. And so they wanted one additional complex in a key bridge segment. And so as negotiations go, Colorado thought this would be something that would be good to give them in exchange for those wonderful Section 7 consultations that keep on flowing. Another piece, so there we got water and land. Another piece of the program is the adaptive management program. That's the part of the program where they answer all the scientific questions that they have about the species. And one of the things I wanted to mention is the program's come out with the 2015 State of the Plat. And this is a detailed report on how the adaptive management program is working. And if anyone wants to dive into that, I have several copies, so raise your hands if you want one, or come see me afterward, and I can go through that. One of the way that the adaptive management program is set up is there's many theories that they have that they're testing, hypotheses, and they boil them down into what they call the 10 big questions. One of the exciting things that through the program's research, the program has successfully completed its first full loop in what they call the adaptive management circle, where you study it, you come to a conclusion, you evaluate that, and then you adjust what you're doing. And I think this may be one of the first times a recovery program in the country has gone full circle on adaptive management. The big question that we did tackle and managed to get through is whether these pulse flows would create suitable nesting habitat in the river for tern and plovers. And what we discovered is that high flows come in through the spring, and they create these sandbars at a certain height, and then the water recedes, and the birds come along and they start nesting, but those sandbars aren't high enough, so then another storm comes through and the nest get blown out. So just by the modern dynamics of the river, very few nests survive on the river. So like any good, I guess, social creature, they now flock to these little resorts that we're building, kind of like what they have in Dubai. But this is for birds. So this is what they call off-channel sand and water habitat. And it's nice because it's surrounded by water except for this peninsula, so that cuts way down on predator issues. And then they put it up like electric fence, and then they have predator, I guess trappers come and they also try to clear the trees away to make sure that they're far enough away from the trees so that eagles and things can't swoop down on the little babies. So that is one of the most exciting things to answer that big question. If somebody does pick this up, they'll find that there's a few other questions that that's what they call it when you've answered. It's either 2 thumbs up, I don't know, or 2 thumbs down. And there's a couple that the staff, this is a staff report, and the staff believe that they're at the place of 2 thumbs up on a couple of others, but it hasn't officially gone through the governance committee yet. So right now, I'm just bragging about this one particular case. So that's really exciting. Then just to sort of sum up for us, what are the benefits to those of us in Colorado? Like I said, we get these Section 7 consultations that are streamlined. Again, you have to be a member of SPRAP if you're in the South Platte, to benefit from that. Right now, there's been 180 consultations since 2007, and 78% of those are in Colorado. So Colorado is getting a
benefit, from the program. And what it allows is continued water use in the South Platte and the North Platte. And there's been no litigation. And as you all know, litigation is very expensive. One of the projects that benefited from being a member of SBRAP is the WISE project. Over the last 3 years, I don't remember which year, but Ruhr is going to be increasing their storage, and they had streamlined Section 7 consultation approved because they're a member of SBRAP and the program exists. Does anyone have any questions?
Actually, just a couple of quick comments before we go on. Even in their view, I really appreciate it. Locally, we actually kind of water concern. We're a member for SBA. Benefit that we provide all the irrigators in the basin. Something else that actually it is very well. We're very much in favor of having it. Any other questions? Thanks, Suzanne. That's very good.
You're welcome.
Let's see. At this point in time, we are scheduled for lunch. So anyway, let's break for lunch. We will let's be back at 1:20. If that's possible, and we will get started with the afternoon.